Well, hey everybody, John Ritzlin here with another ranking video. Every WWE and WCW United States Champion ranked from worst to best, part 2. I got 40 more to cover. I did cover, 53 in the previous video by pretty much just blitzing over some of them because they weren't really all that relevant. But if you haven't seen part 1, here you go. The link is up there. Please check that out. But if I can't get through all 40, I will do a third part. But let's see what happens because some of these, even though they were good, were still unremarkable. Like number 40, Dean Ambrose at 351 days. Pretty much don't remember much of anything because he won the championship and then mostly defended it on pre-shows or in matches that didn't really fucking matter. And he lost it 2 weeks shy of a full year. Lost it in a battle royal. I believe Sheamus became U.S. champion, then dropped it to Rusev a number of months later. That pretty much sums up Dean Ambrose's time as United States champion. Sad as that is. Number 39, Jeff Jarrett. 3 reigns, totaling 184 days. Look, Jeff Jarrett was never a good world champion to me, personally. Mid-card champion, Intercontinental or U.S., he was fine. He worked well as U.S. champion even in the 99. Had a really good match with Chris Benoit later in that year. They actually had some pretty good classic matches. I remember one, I believe it was Starrcade. I think it was Starrcade 99. They might have even had one as Sold Out 2000. That's a little murky to me, but the whole point is Jarrett could have really good mid-card feuds, upper mid-card feuds. I just never cared for him as world champion. But he did lend some credibility to the U.S. title. He did work really hard to make that U.S. title mean something, even though he didn't hold it for, incredibly long times in any of his reigns. Then we get to number 38, Paul Jones, 156 days, 2 reigns. Not manager Paul Jones, but actually territory wrestler, Crockett Promotions, pretty damn good worker, Paul Jones. I wish more footage of him existed. I will have to try and check out more of that stuff, but he actually could work pretty well, and sure, he didn't hold it long, but he was a good worker and a good guy to, put the U.S. title on because he did lend it some credibility. Number 37, Lance Storm, 115 days, 3 reigns. It's weird that he held the U.S. title that many times during his brief run in WCW. He was only there for not even a year. And he was part of the invasion angle and stuff like that. But he was somebody that, was another fine mid-card, upper mid-card guy. Ability alone dictate he could be a world champion somewhere. I mean, personality is what it is. At least what he was allowed to convey on TV. But as far as U.S. championship, oh yeah, a Canadian winning the U.S. title, being a heel, being great in the ring, and just being able to stick it to all the fans and prove, ha ha ha, Canadians are better than Americans. How could you not love Lance Storm? Personally, I love a lot of the stuff he does on his podcast, but as far as him being U.S. champion, I liked him. He was one of the few bright spots in WCW 2000 because there weren't a lot of them. 36, Scott Steiner, 169 days. Nice. Over 2 reigns. Yeah, before Scott Steiner got to the point where he was just ballooned up like crazy, he actually could work really well. Even when he was Big Papa Pump, he could still pull off some good moves and some great promos. And some insane ones. Actually, the insane ones were the best ones. No, he never got to hold the title too long, but he was another guy that he did add stability as world champion later, in the final months of WCW. But as U.S. champion, I certainly could appreciate him because he added some much needed muscle to it and was a good guy to attach that title to, even if he didn't hold too long. We then get to 35, Bret Hart, 186 days, 5 reigns. Yeah. They did not know what to fucking do with Bret Hart in WCW. And by the time they figured it out, then the concussion thing happened with Goldberg. Which, not Goldberg's fault. Accidents happen. But one of the times I remember him winning the U.S. title, he won it from Sting at Halloween Havoc 98 and then dropped the DDP the next night. I mean, 5 reigns, 186 days. That's not even 40 days average as champion. I mean, Bret is a great wrestler, was a great wrestler, my favorite wrestler of all time. He obviously hasn't wrestled in years. You could argue hasn't actually wrestled since 2000 because 2010, shouldn't count because he couldn't take any bumps. But his name alone, his legacy alone could elevate the U.S. title. The problem is they didn't give him much of a chance to do it because his title reigns were so goddamn short. Like a day or whatever. It's just, that's not how you build up a championship. But his name, yeah, it lends some credence to it. Then 34, Dolph Ziggler, 191 days, 2 reigns. Dolph Ziggler as a heel is so goddamn motherfucking fucking much better than him as a babyface. Not that he's not likable, and he worked better as a heel his time. being U.S. champion, facing Kofi Kingston, having classic matches. They tore the house down, whether it was SmackDown on pay-per-views. It didn't fucking matter. If the creative didn't care about him, they went out and tore the goddamn house down. And yeah, he was great as U.S. champion. He could have been great as world champion. That didn't end up working out all that well. But as U.S. champion, 100% Dolph Ziggler helped elevate that fucking title. 33, Konnan, 160 days. In 1996, he was U.S. champion, then ended up dropping it to Ric Flair. That was about it. Konnan actually really did help, bring up the status of the U.S. title, even though, like, there were other people that held it before that were pretty good. But his time as champion, it was cool. This is when Konnan was still very, very mobile and very motivated. And losing it to Ric Flair would then go on to be champion for a while and have some pretty good matches as well, until he would have to relinquish the title a few months later due to a shoulder injury, rotator cuff or something. But Konnan's time as champion, pretty underappreciated, especially if you watch some of those, like, May, June, July. I think it's like, May, June, July pay-per-views. They were pretty good. And he faced off against Flair on, I believe, Bash at the Beach 96. Konnan was really, really good at that point. 32. We're going backwards, folks. 42 is the answer. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Hated that movie. Hated the movie. Loved the concept. 32, DDP, 147 days, 2 reigns. DDP was a very, very good U.S. champion. He was, whether he faced Kurt Hennig, whether he beat Bret Hart for it, whatever he did with any title he was given, he did a remarkable job with it. Sure, he didn't get to hold the world title for all that long, and his TV title run wasn't all that long when he feuded with Johnny B. Bad. But his time as U.S. champion, oh yeah, he made it matter. He made everybody feel the bang. No, that's not a euphemism. The whole, diamond cutter thing. I'm not going, the whole thing of this. Sorry, I'm not trying to get a trademark thing, but that's what he did. And it's great that DDP created that, and the diamond cutter's better than the RKO. People can fight me over that, but he was great as U.S. champion. This is where things are going to start to get a little bit better. 31, Dusty Rhodes, 141 days. Dusty Rhodes, even at that point in his career when he'd been wrestling and especially booking in Jim Crockett Promotions, could still be champion and still be somebody that could get the crowds hot wherever. And he feuded with Barry Windham over the U.S. title, actually, because Barry Windham would eventually take it from him at Great American Bash 88 in a match where Ronnie Garvin ran out, hit Dusty Rhodes, and then you really never saw Ronnie Garvin again on NWA television for whatever reason. But yeah, Dusty Rhodes, 141 days. Barry Windham was the one to end his title reign. Dusty was really good. Dusty, one of the greatest of all time, one of the greatest promos. Maybe not the best wrestler. By God, could he command a crowd's attention like no other. And his name pushed the U.S. title back up into legendary status. When it was already seen as pretty good, his name alone, he was able to, say, okay, Barry Windham beat Dusty Rhodes. That's a big goddamn deal. That's how you build a goddamn star. Number 30, Samoa Joe, 60-plus days. I feel bad ranking Samoa Joe above Dusty Rhodes, but Samoa Joe finally winning a title and holding it, at least as of the recording of this video, is nice. And I'm recording this before Money in the Bank, so if this goes up after Money in the Bank and he's lost the U.S. title, well, I'm sorry. And I'm sorry for not including Rey Mysterio on here. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I love Rey, but Joe should hold the title longer. Joe winning a title finally on the main roster. He can make the U.S. title matter. He can bring it back to prominence, to some kind of good status. And they probably won't let him, but hopefully they do. Number 29, Tully Blanchard, 130 days. I love Tully Blanchard. Great heel. His feud with Magnum T.A. over the U.S. title was just great. That just fucking incredible feud they had. That great bloodbath of a Starrcade 85 cage match. Or a great cage match at Starrcade 85 because I can talk. Great I Quit match. All this, it just perfect storm of everything. This was just fucking great. But his time, him and Magnum trading the U.S. title back and forth. Tully could make the TV title, U.S. title. He should have been a world champion. I would like to have seen that. But he was somebody, you put a title on him, he could get the crowd entertained, wanting to kill him, but then he could win. Even if he got the shit kicked out of him and pulled out the victory, they were like, oh, the guy will get him next time. And that's the kind of feud that him and Magnum actually built up. I'm going to get to Magnum here in a bit. We then get to Sting at 234 days over 2 reigns. That's at the number 28 spot. Sting, 1995, 1998, holding the U.S. title, and that's some credibility right there. That's some great, great credibility. Sting really is somebody that you could just say, yeah, okay, he should be U.S. champion. And 95 was a weird year for WCW, but him being U.S. champion after being, WCW champion for a little bit, or international heavyweight champion, like, about a year plus before that, giving him the U.S. title was a good way to, get a title on him, get the fans back into, wanting to see him and everything. And then by 98, he was Wolfpack Sting, and he was U.S. champion. And then, as I said before, dropped it to Bret Hart. And a not very good match at Halloween Havoc 98, when they could have had great matches. Scorpion versus the Sharpshooter. But still, Sting's time as champion, it was good. It's getting better. And then we get to, speaking of getting better, number 27, Eddie Guerrero, 161 days, 2 reigns. I love Miss Eddie Guerrero. Very few wrestlers' deaths hit me harder than that. But Eddie's time, his time as U.S. champion, I mean, no, only like 80 days, on average with the reign. But my God, Eddie Guerrero's feuds with just anybody when he was U.S. champion. He faced Ric Flair over the U.S. title. In 96, Hog Wild 96, on a Nitro a couple months before that, or maybe it was July. Oh, you know what? I think it was May of 96, actually. I think it was May of 96. And maybe even July of 96. He always had a great match with Flair. And then Flair was, U.S. champion at the time. But, yeah, the incredible matches that they would have. And Eddie would also face off against Steve Malenko. He would he'd just face off against anybody. He would be a great champion. If I'm right, I think at Uncensored 97, it was over the U.S. It was over the U.S. or TV title, but he would always, Eddie could get just about anything good out of whatever title you gave him. Cruiserweight TV, he got good stuff out of the LWO, which I don't know how anybody could have gotten good stuff out of that, because it was a terrible gimmick. Not that it was terrible with the people involved, but still, Eddie, U.S. champion, just the hard-working nature of the man. How could you not love him as champion? 26, Sheamus, 231 days, 2 reigns. Yeah, he was champion once in like 2011, and then he was champion again in 2014, and that's about really all I can tell you. He lost to Rusev in 2014 on a thing on the network right after Raw one night. That's how little they thought of the U.S. title. They put it on, tune into the network and see this, and it's like a 5-minute match, and Rusev wins. Maybe it was longer. I don't know. It just seemed like it should have been shorter. It seemed like it shouldn't happen at all. Just have it happen on Raw. Raw was already 3 hours at that point and still is. Hooray for us. Number 25, The Miz, 321 days, 2 reigns. His first reign was actually pretty remarkable. Pretty damn good. And then he lost it to Bret Hart, and the whole overbooked finish thing and everything. And then he won it back, and then R-Truth won it, or, got awarded or won it or whatever. And then Miz won it back, and then dropped it to Daniel Bryan a number of months later. So yeah, it was a little murky there in the middle. But, and that's part of the reason why I rank Bret Hart's reigns so goddamn low, because he won the title in 2010 when I love Bret, but he just shouldn't have been in the ring. But Miz really was a great mid-card champion at this point. A better WWE champion than I think people give him credit for, myself included. I didn't appreciate at the time just how good he actually was. And he still is. Miz is still doing pretty damn well. But U.S. champion, I would love to see him capture the U.S. title again. If they had him beat Samoa Joe, something like that, at SummerSlam. That would be pretty damn cool. Who knows what's going to happen. But yeah, once they split up Miz and Morrison, Miz really did excel, and I didn't think he would, but credit to him. Number 24, Daniel Bryan, 177 days. Man, they captured the title from Miz at Night of Champions 2010 and then lost it to Sheamus. I mean, he lost it a number of months later. But still, Daniel Bryan beating Miz and all that was actually a great match. It was actually really, really good. And he was champion for a while. They didn't really do much with him after, the beginning of 2011. Though they did have him and Punk face off at the 2010 or 2011 Rumble, the biggest Royal Rumble until the greatest Royal Rumble, which doesn't count because it happened in Saudi Arabia, and it doesn't fucking count because it's Saudi Arabia. Sorry, anybody from Saudi Arabia that happens to be watching this, but your show shouldn't count because your government likes to hack people up with motherfucking bone saws. Not that the citizens are bad. except the ones that believe homophobia should be punishable by death. You stupid fucking twats. Anybody that believes that. Back to that though. Daniel Bryan. Love Daniel Bryan as U.S. champion. Boy, I really need to stop going off on these rants. Then we go number 23, Kofi Kingston, 209 days, 3 reigns. Kofi Kingston, great U.S. champion. I mean, when he captured a title, even if he didn't hold on to it long, it meant something. Because Kofi worked hard, and still is working hard. He's current WWE champion. Again, as of the recording of this video, if it goes up after Money in the Bank. Hopefully he holds on to it at least till SummerSlam, but who knows. But Kofi, whether he's feuding with Ziggler, doesn't matter who he was fucking feuding with. Ziggler, Jack Swagger, I think they had an incredible match at the 2011. It was 2010 or 2011 TLC. That was a pretty good match. And Swagger taking a fucking spill. Everybody taking nasty spills in that match. Especially Ziggler. Shock of shocks, he's taking crazy bumps. But you put a title on Kofi, he's going to make it work no matter what. Number 22, Cesaro, 241 days. This is when he was Antonio Cesaro, before they started having him do the yodeling thing, but also when they had Oksana being his manager. Remember Oksana? I'm sorry if you do. Nothing against her as a person, but her throwing her knee into Naomi's face and shattering her orbital socket. Good job, you careless bitch. Fucking hell. Whether she meant it intentionally or not, that's pretty bad. But Cesaro, Oksana's botching aside, beat Santino, thank fucking Christ, stupid Santino, and held the title for a while. And I can't tell you one fucking thing. He feuded with R-Truth over it. I can't tell you one fucking thing that happened with Cesaro. I can't. I can't tell you what happened with him in regards to like him being champion for that long. He held it for fucking 8 months. And just, good God, it's like so much of it's a goddamn blur, which is sad because Cesaro was and still is an incredible wrestler and gifted as fuck. Number 21, Booker T, 266 days, 4 reigns. Yes, WWE, WCW is where this stuff's going to start to mesh. They had the best of 5 series. Well, they had the best of 7 series. Best of 5, best of 7. Actually, both. One was Cena, and then, for over the US title, and then one with Benoit later, where Randy Orton actually won the title for Booker T. Right. Yeah, it's a bit messy, but Booker meant a lot to the title. He was somebody, you give him anything. You give him any material. He made a fucking fake Japanese shampoo commercial thing with Edge at Mania 18. Yes, that was an actual Mania feud that happened. Work. He somehow managed to come out of the whole Triple H Booker T debacle at Mania 19, not wanting to slit everybody's throats backstage, which I wouldn't have blamed him because it was fucking bullshit. But his time as U.S. champion was pretty damn good. It was a bit messy as far as like that last one where Orton won the title for him, but still, come on, it's Booker T. He can make just about anything work, except when he was in TNA. He didn't really care about that. I don't blame him, but he didn't care. And then we get to number 20, Chris Benoit, as, Jericho would say, actually Chris Benoit. 5 reigns, 357 days, WCW and WWE combined here. Yes, he was a remarkable wrestler, having to put aside all the murder and all that stuff that he did, which he actually did. Stop doing conspiracy theories on it. But, his time as U.S. champion, WCW, feuded with Jeff Jarrett over it. WWE, being Orlando Jordan, doing some other great things with it, feuding with Booker. They had an incredible feud over the TV title also. That'll be something for another time. But Benoit, in the ring, yeah, even if it was just under a year or over 5 reigns, combined, the guy was still goddamn good between those ropes. So I got to give credit for that, even though he's a murdering scumbag. Number 19, Dustin Rhodes, 229 days. Yes, Dustin Rhodes, incredible U.S. champion. He gifted as fuck in WCW. Gifted as fuck even now. He's still able to move remarkably well, even into his late 40s, early 50s. The guy is still fucking, I don't remember his exact age, apologies. But Dustin, peak Dustin, especially when he was an actual Dustin Rhodes, and he was peak, Dustin for a while as Goldust. He worked well with Rick Rude. He worked well with Steve Austin. He was just remarkable watching him wrestle in the ring. He had more athleticism than Dusty, That's no slight against Dusty. And he worked well with just about anybody. Like, really, Dustin could work with just about... Check out his stuff, especially for 1993. You will not be fucking disappointed, in my opinion. And we get to number 18. Roddy Piper, 222 days. I mean, it's Roddy Piper, who should have been WWE champion at one point. But yes, U.S. champion. Sure, okay, his later times in WCW, maybe not all that good. But 222 days, especially when he was in Jim Crockett Promotions, that kind of stuff. Come on. It's Roddy Piper with the U.S. title. That is somebody right there. Great talker. He was a really good worker. And especially when he wanted to have a good match and not just, fight out with anybody. He was somebody you could just not even throw a title on, but get him, get the crowd behind him. It could fucking work. And it did work. And even though he didn't beat Greg Valentine for the U.S. title, that was a good peak U.S. title feud because that title wasn't on the line at Starrcade 83 for some reason. Both did end up leaving the company soon after, so maybe that was part of the reason. Number 17, Sergeant Slaughter. 305 days, 2 reigns. Slaughter, doesn't matter what you did with Slaughter. The heel turn I wouldn't have necessarily done, but U.S. champion, I mean, come on, Mr. USA. I said, good evening, you maggots. That was from his Hall of Fame speech, but he could get anybody, any crowd on their feet. It didn't matter if it was WWE, AWA, NWA, U.S. title, put it on Mr. America, essentially. That's what he was. He was Mr. USA. Not made in the USA. I'll get to Lex Luger here in a bit. Number 16, Shelton Benjamin, 243 days. Pretty much the last good thing that they had Shelton Benjamin do. Shelton Benjamin is still employed by WWE. Are you shocked? I'm shocked. I'm sure he's shocked because they don't fucking use him anymore. Though they did have Nikki Cross climb up on him and, battle with him. That was pretty fun. Also, moving on. I'm going to leave that one alone. Shelton, though, he was U.S. champion and MVP beat him. And I don't think Shelton really did anything after that. He was gone from the company by 2010. Shelton is really, really, really fucking good still, though. His time as U.S. champion, I really did enjoy. I just wish more would have been done with it. Because he was the gold standard. And could still be if they used him. Number 15, Wahoo McDaniel. 5 reigns, 300 days. Wahoo, he's better than Chief Jay Strongbow, let me say that much. I mean, Wahoo for a number of years, multiple territories, was extremely over with the fans. And even in his later years, even when he wasn't, not necessarily immobile, but not able to move as well, he could still get the crowd on their feet, keep them entertained, even with doing very, very little. He, as U.S. champion from the 70s into the 80s, great. Wahoo was great. Wahoo really was just who he was. And folks, I will return in just a second. Okay, folks, apologies for that quick break. But yes, Wahoo McDaniel was a goddamn good U.S. champion, even though he didn't hold it for a ton of time, about 60 days on average. But then we get to Nikita Koloff. Nikita Koloff sure wasn't exactly a world beater in the ring, or at least not world beater, wasn't exactly like a technician, but Nikita Koloff was goddamn good. He was goddamn superior compared to somebody at his talent, at his level of experience should have been. He worked well with multiple people. He was a great U.S. champion. I don't understand why he's necessarily seen as somebody that was like, oh, he was what he was. He was a great TV champion. He was a great U.S. champion. Yeah, he ended up, I believe, dropping it to Lex Luger, which is, and then that started that whole title reign, which was something else. But Nikita was great, and yeah, he held it under just under a year, but still great stuff. I personally respect Nikita Koloff. Seriously, I think Nikita's great. Number 13, Magnum T.A. 302 days, 2 reigns. His feud with Tully Blanchard, encompassed right there. That Starrcade 85, match was just absolutely incredible. Magnum is somebody, I don't know if Magnum would have made it into the 90s, too far into the 90s without having to change everything up. Because I don't know if he was as great as people say he was. But again, I didn't grow up as much on Mid-South, Jim Crockett Promotions, all that stuff. I had to go back and watch it kind of in a vacuum, knowing that, I'm not going to capture as much, I'm not going to be drawn in as much as some things. But Magnum still was great, and as a U.S. champion, he was great. Now, would he have gotten a run with the title, the main title? Probably. Would he have been one of the greatest, of all time? Who knows? It's sad what happened, health-wise, but Magnum T.A. is still quite damn good and deserves his place in the top 15, in my opinion. Number 12, Steve Austin, 240 days, 2 reigns. He beat Dustin Rhodes, Lost to Ricky Steamboat, number of months later. He beat Dustin Rhodes at Starrcade 93, lost to Ricky Steamboat at, God, what was it? I think it was Bash at the Beach. Bash at the Beach 94, I think, or sometime after. And then, won the title back soon after, and then lost it to Jim Duggan. Hooray! Austin, though, at that point, stunning Steve Austin. I mean, just a great U.S. champion. He really was. He really, really was. It's a shame they didn't use him better, but by God, that he set the world on fire in WWE. Boy, did he ever. Number 11, Rusev. 300 plus days, like 312 days, something like that. 3 reigns. 2014, 2015, and then most recently for like a month. Rusev should have been, well, actually, I think it might have been 2016. The whole point is Rusev should have been U.S. champion past WrestleMania 31, but he wasn't. It did give us the Cena Open Challenge, but I do wish Rusev had been used better after that, but he wasn't. But despite all that, he has done so much to make things work, and I just wish that they'd realize what they have with him, but they don't. But still, his time as U.S. champion, he was one of the last great U.S. champions that was around. Modern age. Number 10, Greg Valentine. 512 days, 3 reigns. His opinions on women aside, and his gruff-looking demeanor and the fact he always looks miserable aside, Greg Valentine was goddamn good. Especially in Jim Crockett Promotions. After all this stuff happened with his dad, in the plane crash, he stayed in the business, worked hard and everything. Him and Roddy Piper had some great feuds. Greg Valentine could work with just about anybody, and 500 plus days is nothing to fucking sneeze at. Number 9, John Cena. 5 reigns, 405 days. Holy fuck, John Cena's in the top 10. I can see the hate comments right now. I can almost feel them. Let's be fair, though. Cena's time as U.S. champion was pretty good. I mean, yeah, he had that feud with Booker T. Title got tossed around a bit. Then he lost, and Orlando Jordan won it. And then he, was out of the U.S. title picture for a bit. And then the whole point is yeah, he had a few title reigns that were eh. And then he did the John Cena U.S. Open Challenge, which I think was great. And I'm not the biggest fan of Cena, but it did lead to a lot of really good matches. Sure, it led to maybe where somebody should have beaten him for the U.S. title, but I liked the Cena Open Challenge because he wanted to do something. And they were going to do the same thing with Daniel Bryan on SmackDown, but he got injured and had to retire with the Intercontinental title. But I like Cena's time as U.S. champion. I mean, I may be in the minority there, but that Open Challenge is a big reason why he's up here on this list. And then we get to number 8, MVP. 416 days, 2 reigns. MVP is criminally underrated. Now, was he Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat, or anything like that in the ring? No, but he was a pretty good wrestler in the ring. And I'm sure still is wrestling, but I haven't seen that many of his recent matches. I saw some of his stuff in New Japan years ago, and he was quite good then. I'm sure it's still good now, even though I think he's slowing down. Understandable. But yeah, U.S. champion. I mean, he was U.S. champion a little bit later in his career, but his first time as U.S. champion, that feud with Chris Benoit, and then his feud with Matt Hardy and everything, where Matt Hardy finally won the U.S. title from him in 2008 after Matt suffered a knee injury. That was good stuff. It wasn't. I admit that MVP may have not been like the best in the ring, but by God, he made the U.S. title matter, and that's why he's up here. Number 7, Blackjack Mulligan. 500 plus days, 4 reigns. Blackjack Mulligan, really good, strong worker in the ring. Really good, strong talent. Somebody that commanded your goddamn attention. He's a big guy in wrestling. And as a singles guy, he really did excel. I mean, he excelled whether he was in a tag team or here. And yeah, he had a lot of legitimacy to that U.S. title. Number 6, Harley Race. 184 days, the inaugural U.S. champion. Harley Race, one of the toughest men alive. And if you want to put it, he was a former NWA champion by this point. He had won the NWA title before, a few times, I believe. And you want to make that title mean something, you put it on a former world champion. He only held it for just over 6 months, but still, that right there is like, okay, this is how important the U.S. title is. Oh, Harley Race won it. He's a former NWA champion. This title must be a big goddamn deal. And it was a big goddamn deal. It really fucking was. Sure, he only held it till like July of 75 and then never had again because he didn't need it because he was a former NWA champion. He had done everything in 6 months to establish a championship. And WCW pissed it down its leg like a number of years later, but I digress on that. Had to put Harley Race up here. Almost put him in the top 5, but number 5, Rick Rude, 378 days. Rick Rude. great. Sorely missed. A guy that you honestly could just watch in the ring. Mid-card champion. World champion, yeah, he probably should have been used better as a world champion in WCW. The International Heavyweight Championship's kind of laughed at, even though Rick did have some good matches with the belt, and with his opponents, obviously. But he was a great Intercontinental champion. He's a great U.S. champion, holding it for over a goddamn year. Feuds with Dustin Rhodes, all that. I could watch a lot of Rick Rude matches over and over. One match, and it wasn't for the U.S. title, that I encourage you guys to check out. Beach Blast 92, 30-minute Iron Man match. Rick Rude versus Ricky Steamboat, Beach Blast 92, absolutely great stuff. So, but yeah, Rick Rude, over a year. I mean, come on, over a year. How could I not put him up here? Number 4, Barry Windham, 283 days. He took it from Dusty Rhodes. He was an intimidating son of a bitch, and boy, it's a shame that health and everything caught up to him and that he was not able to keep, keep at his peak. I mean, everybody, starts to have health issues at some point. But things really went south for Barry by like 93, 94. And here, peak Barry Windham, he was flying around the ring, hitting great moves, great heel work. My God, the guy was just incredible to watch. Barry Windham in the late 80s, very early 90s, but especially those late 80s, like 87 to 89, 90, he just could move like a fucking cat. He was so goddamn good. And, after beating Dusty Rhodes, he did a lot with that U.S. title. Then we go number 3, Ricky Steamboat, 267 days, 4 reigns. Yes, Ricky Steamboat is up here, despite only holding the championship for an average of like 65 days, something like that, 66 days. But Ricky Steamboat and Ric Flair had a lot of classic matches and just great exchanges over the U.S. title during the time of this championship being established. I mean, it had been established for a bit, but still, these two guys have showed they are destined to fight forever. If Steamboat versus Flair is not up on your favorite rivalries of all time, and I'm not talking number 1, it doesn't have to be number 1. It might be my number 1, I'd have to really think about that. But if it's not up there on your list, I might want to encourage that you guys watch their matches and then come back and apologize. I'm kidding. If you guys don't find it entertaining, that's fine. But Steamboat and Flair could always put on a great match, whether it was a TV title, U.S., World Championship. It didn't fucking matter. They could tear it up there. The chops, the exchanges, all the stuff they did, the dynamic of Flair being flamboyant, Steamboat being flashy in the ring, but being a family man. But their U.S. title feuds, sure, Steamboat didn't hold it for very long, and somebody else held it for a hell of a lot longer than he did. But Steamboat is somebody that made himself with the championship, made the championship part of himself. I know it's a bit weird to say, but he was really good. Shame that he wasn't able to wrestle past that little comeback in 2009, but he was in his 50s by that point. Number 2, Ric Flair, 773 days over 6 reigns. My God, and I already covered a lot of the feuds that he had, or the title trades that he had with Steamboat. But then you had the one in 96 where he was U.S. champion. And he feuded with beat Conan, feuded with Eddie Guerrero. Sure, okay, maybe, after that, things didn't go all that well. But Ric Flair is U.S. champion and holding it for numerous months. And even his shortest title reign still meant something. He's Ric fucking Flair. How the hell can I not rank him number 2? How the hell can I not rank him number 1? Well, number 1, Lex Luger. 950 days, 5 reigns. 1 reign, 523 days. I hate Lex Luger, the human being, but I have to rank him number 1 because you know what? 523 days is nothing to sneeze at. And as far as people, most everybody had to make Luger look good, like Pillman and Steamboat and people like that. But you're not made champion for 523 days if the company doesn't see something good in you and you're not something special. Lex Luger is not the honky tonk man. Lex Luger can work, honky tonk man can't. Never liked honky tonk man at all. Luger, at least you could pull a good performance out of him. You couldn't do it with honky tonk. But 523 days in 1 championship reign alone. That right there dictates I have to put him up here. I don't like it personally, but I got to put the biases aside. And his remarkable work with Barry Windham, his remarkable work with Dusty Rhodes. I believe and he took the title from Nikita Koloff. I believe Dusty was the one to take the title from Luger, and then, Barry Windham got the title from Dusty. And then, Luger dropped it to Hayes at Wrestle War 89, won it back soon after, went on a 523-day reign, lost it to Hansen at Halloween Havoc 90, won it back at Starrcade 90, and then held it again until he won the championship at, he won the WCW title in a match against Barry Windham in a cage match, and I believe he was still the U.S. champion, and then the U.S. title was vacated. Lex Luger, for all his faults, and he's got plenty of them, is the greatest U.S. champion of all time. People can argue, but leave in the comments what you guys think. Like, share, subscribe. My Twitter handle is in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I will see you soon.